Hey guys, Andy and Spoken Label back in the house on a Sunday afternoon. And I'm full of a cold, unfortunately. So if you get bits of coughing on today, it is me. I'm not well, but I didn't want to let this lady down I'm talking to today because she sent over a book to me the other month. Incredible book it was. Kino and Kinder. Now, Vivien, I'm going to let you introduce yourself to everybody and then we'll go for it from there.
Well, I'm Vivien Sieber, and I trained as a biologist, and then I did some bioscience research, moved into teaching genetics, and then into e-learning, learning technologies, and information literacy. And then when I found myself without a day job rather unexpectedly, I had time. And I'm also the daughter and granddaughter of survivors of the Holocaust. My grandmother had a cinema in Vienna, and she had my dad as well. And I always knew that that they both escaped in 1938 and came to England as penniless refugees. Now, when my dad died in 2000, just before that, he had done a survey of girls that my grandmother had cared for, because she ended up working as a matron in a hostel for girls saved on the Kindertransport in Tynemouth first, and then in Windermere. And what my dad did was he contacted the girls and asked them, now they're old ladies, what had happened to them, what qualifications they'd got, how their lives and careers had gone. And what I inherited from him was this folder of amazingly moving letters they'd written to him, describing what it was like leaving parents at a young age and living in a hostel, moving from a family life to an institution, changing country, no language, different school. He'd also left their contact details. So I contacted many of them, or obviously there aren't as many, sadly, now as there were. And they've been amazingly generous in seeing me, telling me what it was like, emails and correspondence. So I had that. I also had a great huge cardboard box that my dad had just taken family photographs and stuffed them into secondhand envelopes, big ones. And he'd written things like, Paula, Peter's mother, Herman, Peter's father, Peter, of the family. So I had that. And then I found I had an attaché case of letters between him and his mother, completely random, mostly throughout the war and up till the early 50s. And fortunately, they were in English mostly. Unfortunately, my dad's letters were typed because his handwriting's terrible. And I started beginning to put that lot together. And as a geneticist, one of the first things I did was do a family tree. And I discovered there were relatives that I'd never really known existed. And I still don't know very much about some of them. And from that, you start putting, I was very lucky to have so much information. And I also found a little notebook that my dad kept throughout the war when he was interned. And so he'd just gone to university. And the first thing you do with undergraduates, if they're doing science, is you say, this is how you keep a laboratory notebook. Make sure you do. And essentially, that's what he did throughout his internment. So that was when he was on the Isle of Man and sent to Canada and back. So that's really contemporaneous information.
Yeah, it's sorry, pardon me, sorry.
The final thing was my husband and I went to Vienna, and before we went, I emailed all the addresses I could find in a block of apartments my grandmother had lived in. And we had one invitation to tea, well, it was coffee and homemade strudel. And it turned out it was my grandmother's flat. And these generous people showed us around, explained how it hadn't changed very much. But they'd also been to the archive, and they gave us all these papers. And they told me how to find the archives and my grandfather's grave and things like that. And so that really set the quest off. And the archives were fantastically generous, sending bushels of papers. And one other bit was Heinz and Helen Rupertsberger, who are the conservators of the Joseph Stat Jewish database. I emailed them asking a few questions. And 2 weeks later, I got a really courteous letter in English, a timeline of events. They'd been to the archive, and Helen had photographed 120 documents and stuck them in Dropbox for me, which was just amazing.
Wow.
And that was just, I'd asked about the cinema because it's in Josephstrasse. And so that was, I thought it was an easy question. How can I work out what happened to cinema after the war? It wasn't an easy question, but I made some wonderful friends who went on answering stupid questions.
Wow, indeed, yeah. Now, obviously, to backtrack with, obviously, first of all, because the book itself is incredible. It's one of the most vivid books I've read in this genre, and I've read a few of them before now. Now, obviously, tell us then next then, what made you want to bring this together as a book?
I think I wanted to sort of tell the story. My father had written a report when he did the survey of the Kinder. He wrote a report because he wanted the efforts of the committee who'd set up the hostel, because it was all entirely voluntary. He wanted their efforts to be acknowledged. And I suppose my book, was partly, I got his unpublished manuscripts, I got his report, and I'd got all this information. And I think it's a story that needs telling, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I agree completely with you. Because if people look at the book itself, and it's the parts about the cinema in the first part of the book, incredibly vivid. So I've been in cinemas that sort of feel from those very, very old cinemas, and incredible places to go. And I think you've done the right thing straight away with it. So now, if people look at the book as well, they will see a massive amount, of photographs in the book. Did you find you had to do an awful amount of research to get the pictures? Or...
No, because those pictures were the ones that were in my dad's cardboard box.
Oh, well, that makes life a lot easier straight away then.
The old ones are historic pictures that were that they managed to save. The modern ones I just took because I was in Vienna or wherever. This was some in Streatham. And no, I just took them because I was there.
It really is a fantastic book, I said to you so. But you told me before, Mike, before we started recording today as well, the book itself you said it took you several years to do, but it was because obviously you've lived with this all your life, really. When you decided to do the book, was it a quite straightforward process to do then as a book?
Yes. Yes, I sort of started at the beginning, and because it follows the timeline of history, that gave me the structure. And then I went back in different chapters as I got more information and sort of filled in the bits that were missing. I mean, I'm still getting some new bits now. The family tree has gone on changing. There's more, information's becoming available all the time. You've got these big databases and they're digitizing more information.
Yeah, I think that's one really good thing with the internet itself straight away, because it does obviously, like the way it goes nowadays, makes getting hold of information a lot easier than certainly if you tried doing this book, say 10, 15 years ago, that's for sure with it. So did you find there was any information that really surprised you when you were researching this book?
Well, one, I was very surprised by how much information there was during the Nazi period. They documented everything. So when they basically confiscated the cinema, if people don't know, Germany and Austria were divided at the end of the First World War at the Treaty of Versailles, which forbade them to annex. But in 1938, Hitler just ignored that and marched across the border into Austria and into Vienna. Now, my grandmother and father would have watched that parade because the flat overlooked the Ringstrasse and the university, which is where the triumphal march was. And I'd got Peter's description of that, and it must have been terrifying. But at the same time, the archives show that they'd actually valued the cinema about a week after the Anschluss. And then they value it again about a month later. And by value, I mean they counted the toilet rolls and the coal and all the films and things. So the detail is quite incredible that was available. I mean, it is available now.
Yeah,
That strikes me. the thing that really surprised me, I suppose, was the brutality and the number of killing centres in the East that we know about, the big concentration camps and death camps. You know, we know about Dachau and Auschwitz, and Bergen-Belsen, but I didn't know about the incredible number of small. They were just death camps. They would set up to kill people. And as you move, the people who were like shipped east to then be killed, that was a big shock.
Yeah, no, I agree completely on that one, because it's horrifying to think what says is that how recently I was in the times of the world. So, what made you want to call the book then Kino and Kinder?
But Kino is German for cinema, and Kinder from Kindertransport. I actually don't think it's very sensible giving an English book a name in German words, but because the cinema was called the Palast Kino, and Kinder as the Kindertransport, and Americans call them Kinder when they're talking about the children who were saved on the Holocaust. I mean, on the Kindertransport.
No, it makes sense, certainly. So I agree with you completely with that. So I'm really impressed with the book itself, like about your grandmother, Paula, because as she came across as an incredible character in the book she did. And I got the impression of reading about her. She was a lady that I think would have been a success in the modern world as much as well as back then, because she's clearly a very, very strong-willed lady. That's why. So
she was tiny. She was just under 5 foot when I knew. But she had this enormous personality, and she was beautiful, but she was also very, very charming. And I think that she probably was very good at getting her own way. I mean, she certainly managed to persuade her father, who was a draper in Brno, which is Czechoslovakia, that what he needed to do was buy a cinema in Vienna, which was not an obvious thing to do, I would have said.
Yeah, no, you can see that with it. A very, very single-minded lady, I felt straight away with it and in the book. And I think what she went through with your dad and obviously the half brother as well. You do wonder whether other families would have got through what she went and did, but she showed a strength of will in that straight away, and that's blatantly obvious from the book itself, I felt.
Well, I think she tried to persuade other members of the family to leave, and that there were good reasons why they couldn't. Her sister, who she ran the cinema with, had just been bereaved. Her husband had died, and so she was in pieces and didn't want to leave. Her sister-in-law had a disabled child who wasn't fit to travel, so she stayed to look after him. And the others, brothers, seemed to have thought, well, it'll be all right.
But obviously, like I said, we don't need to carry on from that. Obviously, the way it went, we just not know in hindsight straight away with that. So, but did you find it when you were structuring the book together? Did the book go any directions that you weren't expecting at the time?
No, but then I'm not sure I set out with any expectations.
Yeah, I was wondering about that with this book.
I didn't finances that. One thing I did do, because I'm quite good with Word, was I did it in Word style. So I had a structure that I could see what I was doing very easily. So it's sort of indexed and chaptered. But then my publishers provided Mark Cripps as an editor, who looked at it and said, no, you cannot have a chapter that's 50 pages long. And although we didn't change the order, he did divide it up into much smaller bits and chapters very, very, very nicely.
Yeah, no, I felt that you had there's a lot of love in this book, and the love towards your father, obviously, and your grandmother, it showed clearly in this book. It did. That's why straight away with it, and I could certainly imagine if either of them been alive nowadays, they'd have been delighted the way the book came out for you straight away with it. So, out of interest, you said there's research still coming in now. Could you see yourself possibly writing another book in this field?
Well, I don't have another family story like that. I found I quite like writing, so I think I will at some stage write something else, but I don't know what yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's right. Well, you can see from it, there's reading the book itself, you enjoyed writing it, and I enjoyed reading it. For your first book, And like I said, it felt really, really structured, mannered, and I saw the characters. I really emotionally got engaged with the characters on it. And I said, and that's what's really, really powerful writing straight away with it. So yeah, who knows where the way the lay of the land goes, don't you? So,
but I certainly I really enjoyed doing the research as well. I like finding things out.
yeah.
What has happened?
Sorry, go
You
on,
know,
pardon
what
me.
has happened? What started out as just a question of what happened. You know, who were these people? In writing the book, they've turned into real people. So my great aunt Selma, I have a few photographs of her. Also, I didn't know. I mean, a lot of the photographs weren't labeled. So it took working out lots of pictures, lots of the story to work out who the pictures were.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so great aunt Selma, I must admit, she turned from, my sister, my grandmother's older sister, into a person. So when I think one of the big shocks was when her death certificate popped onto my screen one night, because
yeah,
she died in Theresienstadt, and that was in the ghetto where she was slave labor, and she'd been arrested, taken from her flat, and made to work as a slave, and she lasted sort of 6 to 9 months, which was about average. And the death certificate said pulmonary embolism, but that's not that likely.
yeah.
She probably died of starvation.
Yeah, usually was starvation basically and overworked. Yeah, so no, I agree with you. So it's that would have been a shock to your system after getting to know them from your research to find out how they died in quite horrible situations straight away with it. So no, I agree. So,
Yeah,
so
that was that was a bit horrible.
yeah, tell us a bit more about obviously a good part of the book is obviously in the homes, you call it back then. Obviously, the young girls were taken away from their families, and you said you talked to quite a few of them, didn't you? So tell us about their stories then, a bit more then.
Well, they're amazing, really. The youngest child to come over, Inga, was 5.5, and she came over with her older sister Ruth, who was about 7. And I mean, she showed me this heartrending photograph of 3 little girls. She's the middle one, and she had a baby sister who was too young to travel, and so baby sister and mother didn't survive. Her father wasn't Jewish. He deserted her mother, as soon as Hitler and the racial laws came in. At the end of when the hostel closed, and the hostel actually stayed open until 1947, 1946-7, she was too young, and so she and her sister were moved to a school in Manchester.
Oh, right. That's where you wouldn't necessarily know this, but that's where I'm
They
from
were,
here,
yeah,
actually.
because they
Oh,
were in Windermere by then.
wow.
When the heavy bombing started, when war broke out and heavy bombing started, first of all, they were all declared enemy aliens. And the Tynemouth hostel overlooks the sea. And they were given 3 weeks to move on the grounds that they were both enemy aliens and that they may get bombed. And they moved to a beautiful big house just outside Windermere, which I've obviously been to. In fact, I met the widow of the man who rented the committee the house. She's been lovely, and she's been Joan Harris. She's been really helpful. So they were moved to those two were moved to Manchester, and they moved from a very small school to a really big school, and were, I think, not very happy. They went to Israel. Inga came back. Her sister didn't, and I think has died. Elfie, the one we actually met most, lived in Birmingham. She'd eventually got a degree and trained as a teacher and taught English. And she'd married her husband, who was a student. She met him as a student, and he was a lawyer. And they lived in Birmingham and had a family. And I see her daughter from time to time. Others, I mean, Inga I speak to quite regularly, because she's alive and well, and she's 90 in Wimbledon. Others, it's been more by email, and they've left recordings or something like that.
tell us where people can get hold of the book then itself then for those next time.
Well, they can get hold of it from Amazon or Book Depository, or actually any bookshop should be able to order it. It's on Kindle. Or they could go direct to the publishers, I guess. But Amazon and any of the online booksellers, Blackwell's do it, Waterstones do it.
So, and also, sorry, pardon me. Also, as well, then, obviously, if people want to find out more about you, where do you recommend they go?
There's a website which is viviensieber.eu. So that's Vivien, Vivien, Sieber, SIEBER.eu. It's all Vivien Sieber's all one word. Yeah, there's a contact form on there. There's some pictures from the book. There's the index and abstract and things like that. There's also a Kino and Kinder Facebook group, which is growing.
Oh, is it? I didn't know that one. Yeah, right.
Yeah, so if you just search Kino and Kinder, KINO and KINDER, that'll come up.
Really? No, great. I'll make sure I put this on the write-up in a few minutes, and definitely a voice I didn't know about, actually. So I want to thank you for today, Vivien. This has been an absolute pleasure today. I've really, really enjoyed this. So, and I wish you all the best in the future with this book, definitely so. And if you get inspiration for a second book, come back to me. Let me know, please, okay? Because I certainly would love to have you on again today, definitely, if you bring a second book out in the future.
It's really kind. There's one thing I'd like to say is the BBC picked up the story, BBC Newcastle picked up the story of the Tynemouth hostel. Oh. And they made this lovely series of podcasts, which is called The Girls.
Oh, I didn't know about this.
Well, there are now 6. It's on the footer on my email. There's now 6 episodes, but if they've actually you can actually hear some of the girls. Inga's on it. And actually Elfie, because Elfie was kind enough to let us record her, she sadly died of COVID. And Ruth, who again sadly died of COVID. But you've got that real girls talking.
Oh God, yeah. I think it makes sense what you said there. Like if you hear, I think when you hear the voices sometimes, bits of information like that, it brings it to life a lot more. It can do. Your book is a fantastic example of this. But to hear the voices themselves sometimes, I think, does give you that more extra incentive as well. Fantastic. I didn't know about that. I will have to check that one out.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll wrap up here anyway. So hang around anyway, because I do need to chat to you off microphone anyway, Vivien. Well, thank you for today. This has been an absolute pleasure. I've been grateful you got in contact with me originally, and wish you all the best of the book, definitely. So,
thank you so much.
Anyway, guys and girls, that's it for the Spoken Label today. A bit of a short episode than normal, but I've not been that great today, so I didn't want to let Vivien down. So, but as Don Callis over at Impact Wrestlers says, stay safe and more importantly, stay over, and we will see you all next time.